Okay, today I'm going to be showing you how to throw a cylinder on the wheel, electric wheel here. I'm going to go through a few of the tools, a few of the supplies you're going to need, things you're going to need, and then I'm going to show you how to just demonstrate how to throw a cylinder here on the wheel. Okay, first thing you're going to need obviously is a throwing wheel. This right here is called a removable bat. That allows you to move your work after you've completed your form. You're also going to need a bucket of water. You're going to need yourself a sponge of some sort. A few of the hand tools here is a rubber rib, a metal rib, also a wooden tool, and then this is a trimming tool, and this is a needle tool, and last but not least is the wire cutoff wheel. Alright, another thing that I have in my toolbox here is just a piece of leather that's dampened in water, and I like to use that at the very end as just a way of finishing the outer surface of the piece. What I've got going here is I have a 4-pound ball of clay that has been wedged. Alright, what I'm looking for is trying to get it centered on the middle of this bat. So with just a damp sponge, I want to make sure that that bat is nice and clean. And then when I go to place the ball of clay on here, well, let me go through one more other thing. I want to make sure that you're comfortable. Make sure that you're comfortable in how you're sitting, how your posture is. You want to make sure that you're sitting with your legs wide apart. You want to be able to rest your elbows on the insides of your thighs. This will allow you to apply more pressure to the clay using your whole entire body and not just relying on the strength in your hands. So using your whole entire body as a unit to center the clay. Alright. With that being said, I'm going to slam the ball of clay into the center of the bat here. I'm also going to slowly start to tap the clay and make sure that it's making good compression to the bat. What that does is a few things, serves two purposes. It makes sure that the clay sticks, and then it also eliminates any air bubbles that may be in the clay. Alright, so I want to start the wheel, spinning it slowly. As the wheel is spinning, I want to dampen my hands, and I also want to make sure that the ball of clay gets wet. Alright. With everything dampened, I want to make sure that I get this medium pace going with the wheel. Alright? Now what's going to happen is I'm going to start to begin to apply pressure with both hands. Because of an injury, reconstructed elbow injury here, I've had to modify a few of my working techniques. They shouldn't be so obvious, but you might see me tend to switch from a couple different techniques, just depending on if the arm is moving in the right position that I needed to. But with that being said, getting the thing centered is the most important part, and then going into your wheel speed is going to be the second to that. All right. So with both hands damp, I'm going to begin to force the clay into the center of the wheel. And if you're right-handed, then your left hand and your left hand and your left elbow should start to dig into your left thigh there, and you're going to start to use your whole entire body to center the clay in place. All right. So medium speed, damp hands, damp ball of clay. I'm going to speed it up just a little bit. I'm going to start to force the ball of clay towards the middle. All right. And start to form this cone-like shape, making sure that your hands stay constantly slippery. Start to compress. A little bit more water. Then I'm going to switch my hands to try and get more leverage. We're really looking for this like donut, or this more donut-like shape. And then working it towards that center or cone-like shape. Okay, as you can see, I've got this little bit of extra clay down here. I'm gonna try one more time to bring it back into the piece. If not, that's just something you can just trim off, okay? So with the speed still going, slippery hands. Bringing it up, adding some more water. And into that donut-like shape. Take a little bit of that slip off my hands. Make sure everything's nice and slippery. Pressing the top. Nice and slippery. Do that a little bit more. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to bring some of this excess clay that's around the bottom here. I don't like to be real wasteful, so I'm trying to bring it into the piece. Also establishing that diameter of the cylinder. And when your hands are slick, it tends to work pretty well. Okay. That's about all I can bring up from the bottom there. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to slowly trim some of this excess slip and clay off the bottom. Make sure my hands are nice and slip. I'm going to try not to use a whole lot of water. I will use the water though to open up the opening. Then I'll constantly be adding a little bit of water to my hands to make sure that I keep this even coat of slip. Okay. So adding a little bit more water to the center, what's going to happen here is I'm going to start to crisscross my thumbs, and I'm going to slow the speed of the wheel down. Crossing my thumbs, I'm going to start to add pressure into the center of the clay. All right. So crisscrossing the thumbs, opening the ball of clay up. Also with the inside here, I'm kind of compressing this outer ring as well. Okay. With that opened up, you want to keep this cone-like shape going, or some people call it collaring. I'm adding more water, not so much other than to get rid of some of this excess slip clay off my hands. All right, so everything's nice and slippery. I'm going to start to begin to switch from my thumbs to my middle two fingers here on my left hand. The outer hand is going to be there just to guide the wall. What's going to happen is I'm going to go down, leaving myself 1/8 of an inch at the bottom of the clay, and then I'm going to start to flatten out the bottom, and then as I get towards the wall, I'm going to start to curve my hand more into this kind of configuration. And I want to constantly keep my left hand on the inside of the form higher than my right hand on the outside. My right hand is going to be more of just lifting what the left hand is kind of forcing out or pulling up at the same time. So you've got this kind of action going, where this is kind of just being there to support the outer wall. All right, still at moderate speed. As you get taller, you're going to obviously slow the wheel speed down. Making sure the outside constantly stays slippery. I do want to add some water to the inside because that's really fresh clay. It hasn't seen any moisture yet. So opening it up even more, going all the way down to where I feel I'm at about 1/8 of an inch. Slick side. So far so good. So evening out that slip, collaring the top in, compressing. Now my wall out here is probably about 1 inch thick. And what I'm trying to do is keep that uniform, not 1 inch thick, but I'm trying to even out that mass of clay up towards the cylinder shape. So, slimy hands, left hand's pushing the clay outward. Slowly pulling some of the clay up. Each time, looking at the top rim, compressing it, collaring it in. Okay. My slick hands, going back to the outside. Right. Slick hands on the inside. Going to grab more of that clay and start to work it up. Some of this. Your hands start to be like weaved hands. So start to collar it back in, maintaining that tall cylinder-like shape. Quite a bit of clay still down there on the bottom, so I'm going to start to try to be a little bit more aggressive in pulling it up. Make sure you're breathing, really focus. I know people think when I mention that while they're working that I'm mocking them, but really not. It's something that's important. If not, you're rushed to make these dramatic jumps in your work just so you can take a breath, gasping for air. Also too, I didn't mention, but my foot is off of the pedal down here. I don't like to leave my foot on there. Some people do. I've seen where people get real excited and they accelerate and then the whole piece goes haywire on the wheel. So try to maintain a speed that you're comfortable working at, and then just simply take your foot off of the pedal. All right, slick hands again, going in, pulling from that bottom clay. Working the clay up. Slick hands. I'm going to collar the whole entire piece now. And you really wouldn't be able to do this if your hands were dry, or if they were wet, they would move really fast. There's just something in this, this slippery slip down here. And I even take it sometimes just right off of the bat and incorporate it into the form. The reason I didn't do this before is because I've got kind of fat hands. And I want to be able to get as much work down in there with my hands down towards the bottom, without widening the top. Just because the clay on the wheel and the way it spins, it wants to go into this bowl shape. The way your hands work is you automatically start to pull this bowl shape. So pulling a cylinder is a challenge in itself, as you're trying to keep everything this direction, not going out, without you making it go out. All right, just the centrifugal force is really making it go out. So this opening is just as wide as my hand is, so I make sure that now not just the front of my hand, but even the back of the hand is lubricated. I go right into the piece, and I'm going to slowly work the clay up. Alright, so I think I've pushed the limits to using just my hands, or in my case, my arm. So what I'm going to switch over to is using a damp sponge, and that's going to work as my fingertips were on the outside. It's going to allow me to get more of a pull on this one. My hand on the inside is slippery. Outside I've got a dampened sponge. Paying attention to the pressure, constantly changing depending on the thickness of the wall there. Okay. There's still just a little bit more clay on the bottom here than I really need. So I'm going to try to pull just a little bit more of it up. We're getting close to the height that we were looking for. So let me do that one more time, and then I'm going to, before I run out the time here, I want to show you some of the different tools and how those can work for you. All right, so making sure this left hand is well lubricated, cleaning off some of the sponge, getting some of this slip from the back, pushing it in towards the form. Okay. I'm going to take it down just a smidge in speed, just so you can see some of the hand marks start to dissipate using just the sponge. And then I'll do the same thing when I show you the ribs, using some of the ribs. So damp sponge using the index finger. Left hand is lubricated all the way around, so that when I go in, anything that's touching is going to just slide on past. Going into the middle here, bringing that right hand slightly below the left hand on the inside. Should have mentioned too, there's a little goober that was down there that pulled up. So let me do that again. Slowly pulling, steady pressure, breathing. All the way to the top with it. Okay. So, last thing I want to do here is I want to take this damp sponge that I've been using, and I want to make sure I compress, and I also clean that rim. You don't want any sharp edges. Okay, so next thing I want to do, I want to show you some of these different tools that we have here. Right here, the wooden rib. You saw me use that, I think in the beginning here, cleaning up some of this extra clay along the bottom. A lot of people like to keep a lot of that on there. It helps when they go to creating a foot, when they flip it over after it's been drying for a few days. I like to create as much texture really on the outside as possible. It gives something for the glazes to stick to, but it also allows the glaze to have a starting and stopping point. So that's just my preference. Some people like it really smooth. Some people like to have these swirls throughout the piece. Some people go through and they have certain areas where they manipulate the inside and outside thickness. I like to keep it all the same. I like to play around with the texture and then play around with a different color. All right, so I need to re-wet this hand because I just wiped it off. So I'm not putting any slip on it. I'm just going to stick to water at this point. Make sure that the tool is damp as well. And I'm going to keep this at a 90-degree angle, and I'm going to start to just clean up some of these tool marks. And in doing so, I'm going to be pulling some of that grog to the outside, which I tend to like. So going on the inside hand is just really allowing even pressure. Not trying to take a whole lot off in the pass. Just one smooth pass with the wooden rib. All right. Sometimes that's where I would just stop, but since we're in demo mode, I'm going to go through and just show you some of these other tools that we have, since we have them. You see the round part here? Sometimes people will just use that and pick apart, and on the inside, that's where the finger will. So they're really just working a small little area there. All right. These are pretty much the same thing, just one's out of a different material. This one flexes a lot more. This one's a little bit more rigid. So I tend to like the one that's a little bit more rigid. So let me do a pass with that. And I'm taking some of the clay off, but really it's probably most of that slip that we just used throughout the process. Okay. So one pass with that. I'm just going to go ahead and show you the metal rib too. And at this point, it's a small enough tool. I'm not adding a lot of pressure, so I don't need to necessarily support too much of the inside. Once again, that's giving me that irregular texture on the outside that I like. You know, if we were making the perfect piece, then we would just stop. We would have no reason to continue. We would be done. In the art world, we're never done. We should never be done. So I'm going to go to the wooden rib here. I'm sorry, the wooden trim tool here. And I'm going to go down to the bottom here. And what I want to do is I'm going to create like a shadow line. I want to create a place for the glaze to rest and stop. And I also want to just give it a shadow line. And I want to make it, obviously, wherever it's placed later on, looks separate from just like this thing growing out of something, actually something resting on it. So bringing the wheel speed down very slowly, just so I can control that trim. All right, and then I'll take one more pass. This time I'm just cleaning up what I just removed from the pot. That went down to the bat. And I'm going to give it a little bit more of a dramatic shadow line. All right. So hopefully you learned something today, and inspired to make a cylinder. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.